To another edition of Ask Michael Eline. This is where I teach people the law in an unorthodox manner by using examples that we see in the news, case law briefs, but it's all about exposing the Leviathan and its instrumentalities and taking back your rights. Know the law and mean to keep it well. Come here to learn from an expert to know your right. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Welcome back to another edition. Now we're going to talk about Hobbes, Locke, and the Leviathan, control versus freedom. This is something that a lot of my viewers need to understand. You know, I know we have a two-party political system here where it's very polarized right now, but everybody needs to understand that what the Leviathan is. The Leviathan is like a great king, and so the Leviathan was something that Hobbes spoke of in a positive sense, because he wanted a strong monarch, almost like a fascist monarchical system where we had this absolute powerful Leviathan that kept everyone in line. No free speech, no firearms, no arms at all to be able to defend yourself. It's either you become part of the Borg or you lose. And what we're going to do right now is just watch this video really quick. This is Yuval Noah from the World Economic Forum, I think, and this is their philosophy, which is basically like what you read in Adam Weishaupt's books, like Illuminati type books. It's the same kind of deal where this would be the modern process or idea of what the Leviathan is. So just take a look here at what he has to say about natural rights.
Field. Take, for example, the legal field. Most legal systems today in the world are based on a belief in human rights. But what are human rights? Human rights, just like God and heaven, are just a story that we've invented.
Anyways, I think you've seen enough. So this is sort of the idea that you're going to hear on a university or public school system curriculum, that there really are no human rights. All power comes from the state or a statute. It's what your rights are, what we want them to be. And if you don't conform, under a Leviathan type system, they'll be able to seize your bank accounts. They'll be able to prevent you from going somewhere, driving, similar to what they're doing right now in communist China. At least that is the natural law and natural rights theorists. People like me believe that nothing ever really changed from the time we had kings, from the time we started our own government. Large corporations, money lenders, big business has always been in a position to where it can influence the power brokers. And typically they crushed the less powerful people. And so really quick, one of the big people that they tried to crush were the Scots. Now the Scots these are some tough people. And every time they were crushed by the English, they were disarmed. So disarmament was always something that was really important to show that you had conquered someone. How important it was to be able to defend yourself from power. But anyways, take a look here and see what happened in the Scottish society when families were wiped out by the great Leviathan. By the way, this is William Wallace when he was a boy, after he lost his family. He lost his father.
William, I'm your uncle, Argyle. You have the look of your mother. We'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, you'll come home with me.
I don't want to leave.
You didn't want your father to die either, did you?
So that's how it was. So these are Catholics. Speaks French, Latin.
Did the priest give a poetic benediction? The Lord bless thee and keep thee.
It was in Latin.
You don't speak Latin?
So Argyle's from a higher class.
That's a remedy, isn't it? The Lord bless thee and keep
So he makes sure that William gets a proper
Lord
burial
cause his light to shine on thee. The Lord lift up his countenance
for his dad.
upon thee and give thee peace.
Okay, so I don't want to go too heavy into this. It's kind of emotional anyways. So I just want to lay a foundation here that we have. The Scots were, many of them believed in natural law. They believed that the king got his consent from the governed. And this was something that spread like wildfire, got into the writings of John Locke. And it was so bad for John Locke, and I'm going to show you who John Locke is. So John Locke was a natural law theorist, and he was, I believe, around 16 when King Charles was beheaded. And that was about, I don't know, a couple miles away from where he lived, but because he was still a child under the law, he couldn't attend an execution. But it was a big deal because Charles was considered to be a very corrupt king. People didn't like him. But Charles, like all the other kings before him, believed that being king was divine right, like he was given divine power from God to rule over people. Whereas parliamentarians and a lot of the Scottish clans believed that a king was appointed with consent of the governed. It was in the DNA because these are warriors, and warriors want a strong, powerful king. The Scots felt. In fact, the Scots basically defeated themselves. The Black Campbells sold out their fellow Scots, and that's how the English got into Scotland. Remember, Hadrian's Wall was built to keep the Scots from attacking the Romans. The Romans were terrified of the Scots. The bagpipes to them they thought were evil spirits. It was crazy. I used to live in Scotland, so I lived in Glasgow, and I can tell you a lot, but I'm an expert when it comes to the Scots, their mannerisms, their love of country, whether it is Protestant or Catholic. They all have a mutual hatred, it seems, for the royals and the English. Probably the Catholic Scots a little more than the Protestant ones. But John Locke was an Englishman, and he was an Age of Enlightenment thinker. John Locke came after Hobbes. Hobbes passed away in 1679. So John Locke believed in freedom, individual rights, all these principles that were carried over into our Declaration of Independence. Hobbes, on the other hand, was a royalist, big-time royalist, supported the king and an all-powerful monarch, similar to what we would have in Washington, D.C. in 2024, an all-powerful monarch where we have rule by executive decree for a large part of the way things are getting handled. And we have administrative agencies that write laws, which Hobbes would have loved, Locke would not have loved. So King Charles ended up being executed because he was such a horrible king, like I told you before. Oliver Cromwell did the handiwork. He was a Puritan, and he led a model army. He had great arms. They were parliamentarians, so they were from wealthier families, were able to arm themselves. People that would normally provide knights to the king for a knight's feat. So later, outside influences from other kings and whatnot allowed for King Charles of England to come back, and that was called the Great Restoration. People didn't really like him either, but he ended up dying without getting killed. Then James II of England comes in. He was deposed, so he escaped. Nobody liked him either, but he would be the representative of the Leviathan. And with the end of his reign came the new concept that consent of the governed, or parliament, would be the more powerful device. And the English even had a Bill of Rights in 1689 to make sure that would happen. It's sometimes known as the Bill of Rights of 1688, largely based on the ideas of Locke, although Locke isn't really given a lot of credit until much later after he dies for a lot of things that happened in natural law. And that was his 2 treatises of government in 1690 that really set off a firestorm across England. This led to Sir William Blackstone coming onto the scene, and he wrote in the 1760s the Fundamental Laws of England and the commentaries on the English law. Amazing book. It's what most lawyers like me who read the law studied to become a lawyer. The unanimous Declaration of 1776 actually discusses the laws of nature and of nature's God. It's right there. It's based upon the work of Locke and all the way back to Aristotle. Then, of course, WEF would represent more like the modern-day Leviathan. Run our news media, pharmaceutical industry, control our education system, the administrative agency. Like and subscribe.